Are you looking for a cool gift for your grandchildren that will not get broken? Fall victim to being a fad gift? Of course you are. Be the coolest grandpa ever. Narrate a children's ebook in your own voice and send it to your grandchild. They will be able to read along on their tablet or mobile device as the story comes to life with the sound of your own voice. Recording a book on makemementos.com allows you to create a truly personalized gift. By recording a specially chosen book for your grandchild, you can create something that will last a lifetime. Anytime they want to hear your voice, all the grandchildren need to do is play back the recording. Take it from me, creating a recorded book on Make Mementos is super easy. You simply select the book you want to record, and then start recording your voice reading the book to your grandchild. Best of all, you can start out the book by recording a short 30-second video introduction. This is a fun way to say hello before you start reading your book. If you mess up recording one of the pages, don't worry about it. You can always re-record a page until you're satisfied. It only takes a few minutes to record, but you're creating a memory that will last a lifetime. Best of all, your recording can be passed down and shared with future generations. To start the process of recording your own family keepsake, go to makemementos.com/pages/thecoolgrandpa and get started today. If you missed the link, I will have it posted in the show notes and in the affiliate section of my website.
Do you also find it difficult to build up a meaningful relationship with your grandchildren at a distance? As a long-distance aunt to a 2-year-old in Australia, I wanted to create a solution for the millions of family members who cannot be physically together all the time. This is why I created Peekabond, an app that helps you to connect with young children at a distance. The app works with the following 3 steps. First, we give playful activities suggestions that are based on your child's development stage. These suggestions are science-based and gamified. Secondly, you can create a private family circle. And finally, we'll let you send videos back and forth so you don't have to be live at the same time, and save them in one spot for your grandchild to watch. We've got over 120 content suggestions. You can build a love bank for your grandchildren. And if you go to the Cool Grandpa website and look for the affiliate links, sign up for a newsletter with a lot of inspiring content, or you can try the app for free.
Welcome back to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm excited to have you here this week, and I hope that you have taken a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast. It's the best way that you can make sure that you're getting this show every single week, and that you're able to take advantage of the rich information that my guests are providing to us. As an update about my children's book, I now have a proof copy that I'm reviewing for any last little edits that need to be made before the print run starts. Some of you probably may not know, but I am writing, or I have written, a children's book called My Grandpa's Grandpa. And over the next couple of months, as the book is being printed and shipped here to my home, I'm going to be giving you updates as far as where the book is, how you can be able to purchase the book, and also being able to hopefully be able to get into some bookstores and buy a physical copy while you're cruising the bookstore. Today's guest is Richard Iyer. Now, Richard, along with his wife Linda, have been speaking and writing about parenting for over 40 years. And they've recently developed a course called Grandparenting 101. It's a fun and impactful online Zoom course that you can join at any point. The purpose of the course is to help inspire grandparents to be involved with their adult children and their grandchildren. There are 6 modules in this course that Richard's going to go over, and you can jump in at any point. So even though we've started in September, if you sign up now, you're going to be able to get the past courses through replays, and you're going to be able to attend the future courses that we have coming up. Hey, without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Richard. Hello, and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Welcome, Richard, to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I appreciate you joining us today to talk about Grandparents 101.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Greg. This is important. We were just talking off air. We got to get the grandpas as involved and fired up as the grandmas are, and that's our job today.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have this conversation because I think this is a really great resource that's available for grandmas and grandpas especially, as we get started, what is Grandparents 101?
Well, let me back up just a pace and mention one other thing that'll tie into this, Greg. What Linda and I, my wife Linda and I, write books together, and we have some national bestsellers in the parenting genre. And when we set out to write a grandparenting book, we were gonna do one book together and co-author it. But as the further we got into it, the more it became clear to us that grandmas might need a little different kind of book than grandpas. So we split off, and Linda finished a big, thick book called Grandmothering, which, I mean, it has everything, Greg. It has recipes, it's got the whole 9 yards. And I ended up doing a really small, kind of a 120-page book called Being a Proactive Grandfather. And it was mainly bullet points. I mean, I know grandfathers well enough. They want to say, get to the bottom line. How do we do it? What are the main points? And so that turned out really well. And by the way, being a proactive grandfather has become something of a bestseller among grandparenting books. So that shows me that grandpas really are interested. It's just that a lot of times they kind of take a back seat to grandma when it comes to being with these grandkids. So when we set up this course, Grandparenting 101, we made an extra effort to say, hey, if you are a married couple, take this course together because it's the two of you brainstorming that are going to really bring about some results in your family. And if you're a single grandpa, which there are a lot of, millions of them in this country, then even all the more reason to get involved in this basic course of how to be a good grandparent because you're going to do it. You're going to be the grandpa and the grandma in that case. So we've had wonderful. It's just been a wonderful thing so far. It's a Zoom based course. We've got over 1,000 grandparents involved in it already, and it grows a little every month when we do the next module. So I mean, all my suspicions are confirmed that we are in an age when grandparenting is really becoming a thing. I mean, people are not just doing it by instinct anymore. They want to find out what works and what doesn't work. They don't want to rediscover the wheel. If there's good ideas, they want to know about them and not have to figure out everything for themselves.
Well, certainly that's a great perspective on it because what I find is that if I don't have somebody in my immediate family or network that I can model some of my behavior off of, I feel like I'm just stumbling around in the dark trying to find my way. And sometimes it works and sometimes I hit a wall.
No, that's
And
exactly right. Yeah. And I think, Greg, too, that some people were blessed with a wonderful grandfather or a wonderful grandma, and basically they're blessed because they just have to model their grandparenting on what they've already experienced. But frankly, that is rare. We talk to many more people who say, I loved my grandparents, but they weren't very involved with me, and I didn't see much of them. Or they'll say, well, they'll go to the other extreme and say, well, I had a grandma that tried to run my family and gave a lot of advice that wasn't wanted. And so it's kind of neat to say, hey, I want to learn whatever I can from my own grandparents and from models I can find around me, but I really want to form my own model of what a good grandfather is. And I want to have a clear offense. I want to be deliberate. I want to have some things in mind that are goals and that are my vision of what good grandparenting is, rather than just sort of feel my way as I go along and try to figure it out.
oh, I agree. And that's one reason too. I like the course and I like what you're doing, and it fits so nicely with the podcast because as I'm talking to other grandfathers, as I'm talking to, let's call them adult grandchildren
Right,
that can
right.
share their experiences about their grandfather, hopefully people are able to pick and choose and go, oh, that's a great idea that this person did. And this will fit my situation. Or they can also say, hey, that just isn't going to work for me.
Right, right.
And so you have those lessons and those stories, and we're not sitting down and going, hey, this is exactly what you do, and this will work in all circumstances. It's not an engineering book, let's say.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that, Greg, because if there was a one size fits all formula for all of us to use, that'd be pretty simple and pretty nice. But think about it. I mean, every one of us as grandpas have a different situation, a unique situation with different personalities and different circumstances, even different financial resources, and we have to create our own strategy, but it sure helps to have in mind the things others have tried that have worked. And so I might just mention that in Grandparenting 101, we've got 6 modules. They happen once every month on a Zoom call, on a Zoom seminar, as you know, Greg. And then in between, on every week, all the people enrolled in the course, all the grandpas, all the grandmas get a bulletin, an email bulletin that expands on some of the ideas and so on. So it really kind of gets your conscious level up as to what's available. Let me just run through the modules just with one word each so people will get the idea. The first, and they don't really come in an order, but there's 6 of them, and people can come into the course whenever they sign up. But one of the modules is on just sort of the autumn of life, making the adjustment to the fact that, we are getting a little older. We what are our advantages as we're older? What have we learned? How can we sort of appreciate rather than resent the fact that we're getting older? Then module B is called roles and goals. What are the roles you want to play as a grandpa? And what are the goals you have? And we try to help people set specific, like you're saying, directly related to their own situation. Then the third module, and it's the one coming up in the course actually in November. I'm really excited about it. Deep individual relationships with each grandchild. A lot of grandpas sort of think of it collectively. I got 4 grandkids or I got 8 grandkids, and what am I going to do with them? Rather than saying I've got each one is very different from each other. How do I form that relationship? Then the fourth one, module D, I'm really looking forward to because it's about how do you give financial support that's intelligent, that doesn't entitle kids, that doesn't step on the toes of the parents. How do you figure out if you have some resources and you want to help your grandkids with college, let's say, or with their savings or with other aspirations they have? How do you do it in a way that improves your relationship with them and that doesn't cause them to think they've got a silver spoon or that they're entitled to certain things? It's just a wonderfully rich kind of a thing to think about. Then the fifth one is values and faith, and that's a sensitive one. How do we impart our values to our grandkids without seeming like a preacher, without sort of assuming that they're going to follow exactly the beliefs we have? How do you get the things that really matter to you in your heart and in your mind? How do you transfer those into your grandkids in a way that really lifts them and builds them and gives them confidence? And then the last module, maybe my favorite of all, how do you become the connecting link between your ancestors, your parents, your grandparents, going back in your family history? How do you make a connection of all that wonderful history, personal history, and those genetics that you all have? How do you link that to your grandkids so they sort of have an identity? Here's where I came from. So they know stories about your parents and your grandparents and feel that identity of coming from a gene pool and a family that goes way, way back.
Yeah, and I love that last module. I mean, I've enjoyed what we've done so far, but I'm looking forward to this last one because for me, for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, it's been on my mind like, how do we help the kids through stories, even traditions, and maybe some family rituals, know who they are and that they belong to this family and that they're connected to ancestors that have come before and they're connected to people they haven't even met yet that are coming after them.
Oh, that's so powerful, Greg. And I'll tell you, there have been studies now. The researchers have found that there is a direct and correlated connection between how resilient a kid is and how much he knows about his grandparents and his great grandparents. And at first, that seems kind of counterintuitive. It's like, wait, why would that make him more resilient? Well, think about it. If you know where you come from, you know these stories of your great grandpa James who came across the plains in a covered wagon or something, or if you know about grandma so and so and where she came from and she made it through the depression, and you know those little stories, you start realizing, wow, I am 1/8 from that person, or I'm 1/16 from that person. I've got those genes in me. I know who I am. And you think of the world we live in, Greg, where everything's so transitory and we move around so much and people change jobs so much and so on. What could be better to give to a child than a sense of who he really is and where he came from, you know?
Oh, I like that because for me, it seems like the more that we can install that sense of identity within the family and that strength, then they're going to be more resilient. They're going to have more surety of themselves as they go through school and through life, which I always look at it as if I can help strengthen that grandchild, then they're going to turn around and be able to help strengthen their friends that might be in trouble, that might be going through
Oh,
difficult
that
times.
that's a great thought. You're trying to help those grandkids not only be confident and happy themselves, but you want them to become leaders among their peers who can help kids who don't have that kind of confidence or who don't have that kind of background. So, I mean, it's one thing we always say to grandparents, you know, you've got the wonderful opportunity to be the confidence builder in these kids because you're not the parent. You don't have to discipline them. You don't have to, be the one that finds the responsibility to get them where they need to be and so on. You're relieved of all those things, and your job can become, how do I increase the self-esteem and the confidence of these kids? And it's one thing to just compliment them all the time and say, good job, you're great, and we should do that, but you go even deeper and say, guess what? I'm the link to where you came from. And you come from some powerful people and you have that capacity within you. That becomes very real. Believe it or not, we've had grandpas say, I go and tell my kids stories and I say, what book do you want me to read you? Or what story do you want? And they say, tell me that story about my great grandpa. Tell me about Uncle Arthur or whatever. They feel that. They understand that that's part of who they are.
It's a great way, and I keep going back over this, but it's a great way to make sure that they're well grounded because as they experience or have seen things like bullying, even moves, some of
Yeah.
the unsettling things that go on, and I don't necessarily mean moves are so negative, but it is disruptive for a child that really wants stability to have their parents go, hey, guess what? We're moving from Dallas to Denver,
Yeah.
and that's not horrible, but the child's giving up their friends, their network, and unless they have a strong family unit, that can leave them very unsettled.
Yeah, that's exactly right. People, back when we were doing so much parenting work, a lot of people would say, "Well, I need to move professionally. How negatively will that affect my kids?" And our answer was always, "Listen, it doesn't matter where you live if you have this strong family culture that goes with you wherever you go. Those kids will always have that kind of security." And again, I hasten to add, Greg, that all of this needs to be thought of. If you're a grandpa, you got to think of all these ideas and all the things you want to do in connection to the realization that it's your children, the parents, who are the real stewards of these kids. It's not you. And if you take action, I mean, again, my book is called How to Be a Proactive or Being a Proactive Grandfather. And my only worry about that title is you get some grandpas who are so proactive, they charge in like a bull in a china closet and start reorganizing the family and telling their kids how to be good parents. And that can be so destructive. So what we've spent the last unit on, as you know, in Grandparenting 101 is how do you form a teamwork? How do you form a really working team with your children, the parents? And how do you meet together regularly and talk about these grandkids and have the parents telling you, well, Jimmy needs some help on this, or Sally's having a little struggle here. And you're listening as a grandparent, you're taking notes and you're saying to the parent, how can I help? Where can I fit in? And that empowers the parent, and the parent begins to see you not as someone who's judging them or someone who's trying to come in and take over. They see you as a support mechanism, and they begin to trust you and bring their concerns to you. And then I just love the thought of this team, grandparents and parents meeting together, maybe going out to a restaurant once a month, or if you live close enough, or getting on a Zoom call and just talking about those kids, brainstorming. What do they need? What does each one need? How can each of us help? How can we work together?
Well, and that's perfect because I think too that for me, the best way that I can help support my adult children and the grandchildren is to make sure that I'm listening. It's that old Mark
Yeah,
Twain thing, like
right.
you've got two ears and one mouth, use them in the same proportion. Uh,
Absolutely. That's great.
I would love to have you touch on a little bit the three different roles that you feel that grandparents can play, and grandfathers in particular, throughout the grandchild's development in their life, because I love this concept that you have.
Well, we actually kind of call them the three C's, and they all revolve around what we've been talking about, this encouragement. But when kids are little, when our grandkids are really young, they're preschoolers and so on, we just like to think of ourselves as grandpas as their cheerleaders. I mean, we're out there just supporting them. We're out there just giving them our confidence and our praise and telling them how much we love them and being specific. You were so good at this. You have such an ability to, you talk so well for someone your age. You can't flatter them in the sense of telling them things that aren't true, but know them well enough to just cheerlead them all the way through. Then when they get to be, elementary age, we sort of use another C word. I love the word champion. You're their champion. In you want to champion them in the sense of a verb, not a champion who wins a medal, but a champion who promotes and helps and tries to just, be there for them all the time. And then if you've played those two roles well, you've been a cheerleader to preschoolers and a champion to elementary age, by the time they get to be adolescents, hopefully you kind of become their consultant, the third C word, where they're asking for your advice and you're able to say, I remember when I was your age and it's not easy being in junior high, and how you doing and what can I help you with? And you're not directing them, you're not bossing them around, you're just trying to be their consultant and their resource, their advisor. And kids love that from a grandparent. It's almost like, hey, you can play a role in my life that my parents can't. They're too busy with raising me. You can come in and help me feel good about myself.
Yeah, and folks, this is all part and of the modules of this grandparenting 10 or grandparents 101, as well as it's in the book Being a Proactive Grandparent. And I'm going to make sure, Richard, that I put a link for that book the link for, of course, the course, and then our previous conversation where we really did a bigger
Right.
deep dive onto it.
Yeah, and I think the important thing, Greg, is we did it's called Grandparenting 101, and we wanted it to have that sort of feel. I mean, parenting, we're all familiar with. It's a skill. It's a bunch of stuff we work on. That's the way we should think of Grandparenting 101. And people who go on that website, grandparenting101.com, can get kind of an overview of what the course is. And remember, you don't have to wait till the course starts over. You can get in at any point because each of the 6 modules stands alone. So you can come in and join at any time. And hopefully the link you'll put in on being a proactive grandfather is just the Amazon link, because it's doing really well on Amazon, and you can get it in a matter of 2 or 3 days.
And I'll be sure to put that link in there. So if anybody's driving around or taking a walk through the neighborhood or whatever, and they don't have, something to write down, they'll be able to find it in the show notes. Now, one of the things that I think is really interesting with this course is that you've developed a faculty for the course and even some of this movement. And it's really unique because I find that in so many different areas of life or coaching or wherever you're going, so many people are so closed off and protective of this is my material, this is my thing.
Especially online. They don't want to give up anything.
Right. And you've taken the unique approach of inviting everybody that's involved in this grandparenting movement to come in and provide links and articles and supplemental materials for what you're doing. And how did that thought process? How did you decide to be so generous with this offer?
Well, that's such a great question, Greg. I appreciate that, because back we spent 3 decades as best-selling parenting authors, and we ran into a lot of what you were saying. We'd reach out to other parenting websites or blogs or whatever, and we'd say, let's link our stuff together. And it was almost like, no, 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 we're not giving you our followers. We're competing with you. We got this group over here and you got your group over there. And I just felt how foolish that was. I mean, we could use 100 times more help with our family. We ought to look for it everywhere and share it. And so when we started this Grandparenting 101 thing, we thought, hey, I think we're all a little older now. We're all a little more mature. We don't have that protective sort of isolation mentality. So we reached out to and hats off to Christine Crosby, who had sort of grouped together about 20 grandparenting resources and mentioned them in her magazine. And so we reached out to all 20 of those and we said, hey, we respect what you're doing for grandparents. And we're all different. We all have different ideas. Let's sort of band together and share each other's resources with our own followings. And I mean, what could be more natural? I don't want people in Grandparenting 101 to just hear from Linda and I. We're doing our best and we have some good ideas, but we certainly don't own the space. And so it's so fun. Now, after we do the class each month, for the next 4 weeks, we send out links to you and to other grandparenting resources that have things to offer that tie into that particular module. And it's just wonderful. People then can click on those things and learn more. And it gets back to what you said at the very beginning, Greg. If you're a grandfather, your situation's different than that of every other person. But if you can learn a little here and a little there, and you can go to one link, and you may go to one link and say, this has nothing to do with me. I don't even agree with this. Then you may go to another link and say, that resonates. That's something I'm going to work on. And you become your own expert. That's what we all want to be, right? We don't want to be some clone of some other person. We want to say, I got my grandkids, my situation. I want to become an expert on my grandkids, but I'll take ideas from everywhere.
Sure. And that's so true, is that I go back to thinking of little kids sometimes. moms and dads can say one thing to the little kid and it's an absolute correct statement, but you're not going to listen to it because it's your mom and dad. But then if your uncle or a teacher or a scoutmaster or somebody says the same thing to you,
Right.
you're going to listen to it. It's some of it's delivery and some of it's just the voice and the role and everything else that's tied into that.
Yeah. Well, that's exact. You and I are on the same wavelength, Greg. And I just want to say, as we get close to the end here, uh, I think all of us as granddads are interested in our legacy. I mean, we get to be a certain age and we start thinking, what am I going to leave on this world when I take my leave of absence? What am I going to leave behind? What's my legacy? And the answer is our grandkids. There's just no question about it. That's who we live on through. And I hope I've got another 20 years on this earth, but I want to spend as much of it as I can with these grandkids of mine who are they're such extensions of ourselves. And the better we get to know them and the more we understand what motivates them, and every one of them's different, but spending time getting to know those grandkids and figuring out what we can do to help, I just think it's the best time we'll ever spend. It's more important than our golf game. It's more important than our investment portfolio. It's the priority of life.
Oh, that's well said. Now, Richard, since we're wrapping things up, is there anything about the Grandparenting 101 that I didn't ask you or we didn't talk about that you want to mention?
Well, I'll just reiterate what I said a little earlier. We get a lot of letters, people saying, well, I know you're up to module C and there's 3 more to go. When can I sign up? I mean, do I have to wait till the course starts over again next spring? And the answer is absolutely not. We intentionally designed these modules to stand alone. So you can come in on module C or module D. So when people go and read that overview at grandparenting101.com, just remember you can join right now, and the sooner the better, because frankly, the module we've got coming up, module C, is in a way, if we were putting them in a sequence, we probably would have put that one first, because deep individual relationships with individual grandkids, that's a wonderful place to start. So, go on there and, I should say one other thing. We wanted to be sure, Greg, that no grandparent anywhere in the world who wanted to take this course would say, oh, I can't afford it. So the way you'll be interested in how it's priced, you can pay nothing. You can join for free if you're a person who doesn't have resources and needs that help, or you can pay what you can. It covers the cost of the course. And I've just loved that, because people who can't afford it, they pay, and that helps to cover those who can't afford it. So it's like, again, we're all in this together. And even, I mean, it's very cheap anyway, but I love the idea that you just pay what you can. Thing you just join,
Yes.
That's the way we want it.
Well, and that's another thing. I just love the spirit of generosity that you and Linda have towards grandparents in general, and this course is just been fantastic and inspiring. Honestly, I've seen courses similar that would be $800-900,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
more, and you guys have really kept this extremely reasonable.
Well, it's a movement, Greg. It's not a profit thing. It's a thing of saying, how can we, it costs a little to run it, but how do we all work together, almost like a co-op, sharing the ideas, helping each other? There's 70 million of us. Some say 80 million now, between 70 and 80 million grandparents just in this country. And we've got people joining in Europe and other places. And you think of the world we live in and how complicated it's getting. I don't think it's an overstatement to say grandparents may be the greatest untapped resource in this world. And the more involved they get with their kids, their grandkids, the more likely this world is to pull out of its difficulties, and good times ahead if we all work together.
Oh, that's it. That's a great view and a great place to end on. So, Richard, Thank you so much for being on the Cool Grandpa podcast. I really have enjoyed this conversation and talking a lot about the Grandparenting 101 course.
Thank you, Greg. You're a kindred spirit, and let's all go out and help those grandkids.
I really enjoyed catching up with Richard again, and that probably came through in the conversation, or at least I hope it did. If you've been out walking in the park or running around and taking care of errands, I've got links in the show notes for Grandparenting 101, and I really do encourage you to go down, check out Grandparenting 101, and then sign up for that course. You are really going to appreciate all the wisdom and all the interaction that we're having on the Zoom calls. I've also got a link to Richard's book, Being a Proactive Grandfather, in the show notes. So it's easy for you to pick up that copy either for yourself or for the favorite grandfather in your life. I've also included in the show notes the link to the conversation that I had with Richard probably a year or so ago. Really did a deep dive in his book about being a proactive grandfather. So I wanted to make sure it's all easy for you. So if you go to cool-grandpa.us, look for this episode, you'll be able to click on that and find all these links in the show notes. I'm looking forward to having another awesome conversation with you again next week. Until then, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.